Is this the end for the James Bond franchise as we know it? For a lot of people out there, this could be, to quote Adele's rendition of the opening credits for the film Skyfall.
This is the end.
I'm sorry, I had to do it. I had to include that in the video somehow, but even with that being said, I admit I am not one of the people who is fully there on this idea to actually say that the franchise of James Bond is over. Is it potentially more so in trouble? Yes, absolutely, and we are going to discuss that today, but I don't actually fully believe that the franchise itself could be dead. In this video, we are going to explain why I do believe that James Bond being sold off by its original owners to Amazon was not the correct move, and how it could affect the future of the name James Bond, whether for the best or for the worst. To all the James Bond fans watching this video, as a fun little question, what is your least favorite James Bond movie and what is your favorite? Leave it down below in the comments. With all that out of the way, let's just get right into it. So James Bond is now no longer its own thing and will be creatively controlled by Amazon and not under the names of the original owners who have had it since the name James Bond came to the big screen. The Broccolis, as they are named, have had creative control of this franchise for over 65 years now, since the early 1960s, around the time when the first several films were coming out. Since then, they have also been under the publishers of multiple different studios, including Eon Productions, MGM, Columbia Pictures, Sony Pictures, and then recently it's been very up in the air as far as who was going to be the next to be the publisher, and yet now it comes with something much more different in mind. While looking for the next group to share the rights with, they have come under the name of Amazon. Amazon MGM Studios is now officially going to be the studio that controls not just the publishing rights, but also the creative rights to the James Bond name. Essentially, this means that they will be able to make whatever they want, movies, television shows, and so on, without the say of the Broccoli family. Reportedly, as the kids say nowadays, they seemingly took the bag when it comes to how much they were paid in order to let loose those rights to Amazon. It's been an ongoing feud that the Broccoli family has had with Amazon since around 2022, when those rights were getting shoveled around with Amazon as a name in the conversation. Barbara Broccoli, one of the heads of the family, has specifically come out before to say that she doesn't believe Amazon is the right choice for the name James Bond to be under, because they believe that it should be under the name of a company that the James Bond name is not just going to be another piece of content to. Basically, in some ways, the Broccoli family was in a no-win situation because Amazon had acquired MGM, the studio that currently owned James Bond, and so that's why they were fighting each other with regards to the rights. With this new deal, as James Bond is now under Amazon's control, it will most definitely be the case that we see them integrate the name James Bond into their streaming platform Prime Video, where rumors speculate that they want to expand the name James Bond into a cinematic universe in order to make spin-off television shows and other different media projects. Because of the recent deal that happened where the Broccoli family completely let go of control with the creative side, not a single person other than Amazon themselves has a say in the matter of what gets made and how it gets made. This leads us now into the conversation about where the problems are with why I think this was a bad move. This is essentially making Amazon a monopoly in a matter of speaking when controlling this franchise, allowing them to do whatever they want, and therein lies the first big problem. When you look at where this franchise has gone since the early 60s, since it was conceptualized, for pretty much 95% of everything that has been made around it, it has been for the majority of time on the big screen as a movie, with now 6 different actors having played the role of James Bond. The other 5% can go over to several video games that have been made, along with books and comics that have come out over the years. However, in terms of television, the franchise has never really had an actual full-on project to be made, although apparently there was something that happened in the early 50s that I don't even know if I'm really meant to consider that as an example, given how old it was. When we talk about what it means to expand a franchise, it comes down to 2 simple questions. Is it the right and important decision to make as much stuff as possible, or is it key to only focus your time on one media format for the majority, while every now and then you might might sprinkle in other areas of media to make a name for it. With James Bond, that has absolutely been the case. A majority of all media around it came from movies, while every now and then you might get a video game or a book be made from it. Not to be on the nose, but now that it is controlled under a big corporation like Amazon with their own streaming service, we could potentially be walking into the line of fire of a quantity versus quality approach. As people know with other franchises out there right now, that has been something that hurts them in the long run. Examples such as with Marvel and Star Wars, two of the biggest IP conglomerates in the world. It has been wildly reported over the last several years that one of their biggest issues is the quantity over quality approach, and to exceedingly put focus on padding out subscribers for their streaming service of Disney+. A business decision that, as we have seen in recent years, has severely hurt them. For James Bond, the quantity over quality approach would signify that they also make projects out of other characters besides James Bond in order to create what it seems like Amazon has wanted to go for, which is another cinematic universe. I don't think it goes without saying, but this is a major issue if they go about doing this. When people think of James Bond, they don't think of the idea that you have to have 10 different shows following all these different side characters and plot lines. It shrinks down the universe, and ultimately, it shows that you don't really have that much care in the brand name because you are just using it, again, in order to increase your subscriber count on your streaming service. The other major issue that this affects, as I've mentioned already, is that it might put less focus on creating films around the IP. When people think of James Bond, what do you think 9 times out of 10 a person is thinking about? They think about the movies around the character, no matter which version it is. Daniel Craig's, Pierce Brosnan's, Sean Connery's, and so on. It's a franchise that has spanned many different generations of people since the early 60s, Daniel Craig's latest one being the generation that I grew up with, and also, I'm going to admit here, is the only generation that I've actually seen a movie from. I have yet to see any other Bonds in their movie, but one of these days, I will go through a marathon watch of each and every one of them. When it comes to the spy and action genre, the Craig films are a couple of my favorites of all time, particularly with Casino Royale and Skyfall. I love those movies to death, and that is the kind of stuff that I would love to see this kind of franchise do more of. Now imagine what we could get with that on the film side instead of having to have a crap ton of streaming service shows for characters that no one cares about enough to have their own stuff. It's okay sometimes for side characters to just be their own thing, and say for example, if one of them is really good, then that will allow for audiences to be okay with them getting a film or show. One of the most insane cases ever of this kind of example for me is Andor in Star Wars. I don't think many people asked for that show, and yet it became one of the best shows I have ever seen in my life. But it is a very rare example that you won't see often. James Bond as a character to me should be more represented on the big screen in the film format as opposed to the television version where you could easily shrink down the world to make it feel lesser than what it actually is. That is the gift of having movies be a thing. There is only so many different kinds of stories that you can tell in each different format that will work, and to me, this is why Bond has worked for over 60 years, primarily being on the big screen. Now let's, for the sake of it, put out a more optimistic hypothetical to the situation we find ourselves in here. Hear me out. But what if Amazon goes and finds some really good filmmakers and storytellers to give us some stuff that would be on the level of quality that we have seen other Amazon shows be done for? You'll see some of the examples that I'm putting here on screen, but I think it would be crazy to say that Amazon hasn't done good stuff already since the streaming service has gotten into making its own original stuff or adapting other stories. Yes, we are living in a day and age where the streaming service business model is starting to slow down pretty quickly, depending on what streamer you are. But right now, Amazon is definitely one of the bigger ones, and it has given us some very interesting television shows. Now, on the other hand, as far as it comes to my point of view, I would still want them to be making movies. I think it would be a colossal era if they brought in these really good and talented filmmakers, and all they did with them was have movies be made for the streaming service. It is highly unlikely that that happens, by the way, just so we are clear, but my point still stands. You gotta bring people in for the right reasons. Bring in Jonathan Nolan as a first-look producer, or Tony Gilroy from the Star Wars universe as a first-look producer, given he's been very big into the spy genre. I think that Tony Gilroy would be the perfect choice to make a television show, given his work on not just Andor, but also given he worked on the Jason Bourne movies. Jonathan Nolan, the brother of Christopher Nolan, already works with Amazon, given he is one of the executive producers on the Fallout television series. His brother Chris has been open about this in the past, that he's always wanted to make a James Bond movie, but at this point, it definitely does not seem like that is a very likely thing that will ever happen. But who is to say that his brother Jonathan doesn't try? Tony Gilroy is a person who would obviously have to forego his potential stay at Star Wars with Lucasfilm and Disney, because right now, he is also reportedly about to get a first-look deal with them. These are just two examples of filmmakers that I am considering, by the way. I'm not saying that these are the only two that could do it. At the end of the day, though, all of this doesn't sit with me because I still firmly believe that James Bond should mainly be focused on as a film trilogy and not be pressured into becoming your next cinematic universe. The only kinds of examples that you could honestly say that a cinematic universe makes sense to do for are brands like Star Wars, Marvel, DC, and then a few others, but something like James Bond just does not fit it. As it is, most people nowadays are just not all that on board with a cinematic universe. James Bond as a character should be front and center without any added filler that could potentially shrink down its brand name at the sake of making a decision that a business exec thinks will make them more money. Amazon as a company has done a lot of good stuff with their streaming service that people have enjoyed with very talented filmmakers, and that is the only silver lining that I could possibly put within this situation for why I'm even mentioning this in the first place. This is ultimately why I don't firmly believe just yet that the James Bond franchise is over, but this video I made here today is really one of the biggest reasons why I'm worried it would be on that way out if not handled correctly by Amazon. But there you have it. That's my commentary on James Bond as a franchise right now coming under a new change. What do you all think of this decision for it to be under new leadership and my commentary on it? Leave your comments down below and let's have a nice and respectful conversation about it. I can't ask enough that you be respectful, as I do read all my comments to the best of my ability. Thank you for stopping by my channel. If you want to see more moving forward from me with regards to film and television and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you are new here and turn on that notification bell. I'm trying to build a community on here and your support would be appreciated. That's a wrap, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day and I will see you all soon for the next video.